Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on this channel. And it's been a pretty quiet stretch for severe weather for the past several weeks, but that's about to change as we are heading into a more active weather pattern for this week and into this weekend across the southern United States, with a multi-day stretch of severe weather starting today. On December 26th, we have an enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 outlined for today in parts of the southern United States, and then a marginal risk level 1 out of 5 for tomorrow, day 2, for parts of the Gulf Coast region. And then again, and another enhanced risk for day 3 on Saturday for parts of the southern United States. So it's going to get pretty active here. We're going to discuss each day going forward. So starting with today, on Thursday, December 26th, we have an enhanced risk of severe weather outlined for southeast Texas, for places like Houston, Texas, and other parts of the southeast Texas corridor, mainly for the tornado threat, with a 10% tornado probability. And with that enhanced risk, that is a chance for a couple of strong tornadoes as well, with storms this evening before they merge into a squall line. And other hazards are expected as well, with large hail for the next few hours across eastern Texas and Louisiana, and then damaging winds, especially as storms congeal into a squall line ahead of the cold front as they approach the Mississippi River tonight. And then as we go into day 2, that is on Friday, and there is a marginal risk of severe weather for parts of the central Gulf Coast. That is mainly for a damaging wind and large hail, and also could be a low-end chance of a tornado, with storms that is occurring along a frontal boundary that's stalled across the southern United States. Not expecting a lot of severe weather, but there is a marginal risk for just in case if one storm decides to turn severe. And then for day 3 on Saturday, this could be a bigger day for severe weather, with an enhanced risk outlined from central Louisiana, including places like Monroe and Alexandria, Louisiana, and then going through central Mississippi and into parts of western Alabama, mainly areas west of Tuscaloosa. And this could be an all-hazards severe threat, as well as the SPC discussing the possibility of a potential severe weather outbreak with multiple rounds of storms with all severe hazards possible. And so we're going to discuss why the concern is higher for Saturday. But there is currently some uncertainty with a little bit of some model differences, especially with timing and things like that. We're going to go through some of the uncertainties for during the day Saturday. So with that, we're going to look at the current state of the atmosphere. So this is the upper level water vapor imagery, and this is showing a couple of different storm systems that we're watching. The first one being this compact shortwave that is over Texas right now, this little swirl you see here. That is the main impetus for the severe weather threat today, as storms are occurring along and ahead of a cold front that is moving across Texas. And storms today have had a history of producing a few tornado reports during the afternoon hours. And so storms today will congeal into a squall line as they head towards the Mississippi River tonight and gradually weaken as well. So going back to our water vapor imagery, we have the next storm system that we're watching here. That is this big swirl here out in the western United States. This is the next storm system we're watching for the severe weather threat this weekend. So now looking at our upper air charts, we're going to start at 500 millibars, and we're looking for our trough and ridge pattern. So here is our shortwave that is over Texas, and we have stronger winds surrounding the base of that trough. So this is a compact but pretty strong storm system that is moving through the region for today. And then that is going to be lifting east and northeast during the evening and overnight hours tonight. And so this shortwave has also a pretty nice mass response ahead of it. This is at 850 millibars. We have our low-level jet that is bringing up warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico and helping to supply that moisture and instability for storms to pose a severe threat. This also increases the low level wind shear, which is necessary for tornadoes. So that helps increase the change in direction and wind speed with height. And so down at the surface, we have a pretty strong high pressure system across the northeastern United States. But over Texas, we have kind of a weak and broad surface low that is across eastern Texas. And so that is strong enough to lift a warm front up into Louisiana, eventually up into Arkansas later tonight. We can look at our moisture here. And so we have our 60 degree dew points shaded in the green across eastern Texas and into Louisiana and across the Gulf Coast. And so this is the tornado watch that is currently in effect for parts of eastern Texas, and that is going to be expanded into Louisiana here in the next couple of hours. That is in effect until about 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Some pretty high probabilities for tornadoes, but not too surprising given the enhanced risk out in this general area. So that's the current state of the atmosphere. Now let's look into the model guidance here and see how the weather is going to progress over the next few days. Starting with the 18Z run of the GFS, you can see that it's initialized our upper air conditions pretty nicely. We have our shortwave across Texas. That's going to be moving up to the northeast during the overnight hours. And then this is our next storm system over here across the western United States. So let's go through the overnight hours and see how this progresses. So we're going to go up here to about 6 a.m. Friday morning. And this is our first storm system that is moving up across the Mid-South and Tennessee Valley. But the system is going to be gradually weakening as it moves to the northeast. And as it pulls away from the greater moisture and instability, the severe threat is going to rapidly decrease during the overnight hours tonight and into the day Friday, leaving just behind a marginal risk of severe weather across the Gulf Coast. This will be our next shortwave trough across the central and southern United States. Kind of a low amplitude shortwave. Not going to have all that big of an effect. It's just going to produce a lot of rain across parts of the south. And then so we can look here at our surface pattern, and there isn't all that much going on at the surface, just a broad southerly flow out of the Gulf, helping to supply more of that maritime tropical air mass, so that warm, moist air mass coming up from the Gulf. And so these are our dew points forecasted for Friday. And you can see our surface dew points gradually surging northward as that southerly flow brings up that warm, moist air mass from the Gulf. And that is ahead of our next storm system that is expected to be the main impetus for severe weather on Saturday. This is our next shortwave that's coming out into the plains. You can see here this closed contour. This is our next storm system right here. And this is going to eject out into the plains during the morning hours on Saturday and then into the Mid-South region Saturday evening. This is a pretty classic weather pattern for some other higher end severe weather events that have occurred. Not necessarily that this is going to be a higher end severe weather event, but just from pattern recognition, this does look pretty concerning for a severe weather threat across the southern United States. And then as we go through the overnight hours, that storm system ejects out into the Tennessee Valley and Ohio valleys during the overnight hours on Saturday. So we can look here at 850 millibars and see how the low levels progress. So we have our low level jet that is situated across the Arctics and Southern Plains. Here generally out of the southwest of about 30 to 40 knots or so. That is going to crank up to 50 plus knots across the Tennessee Valley during the overnight hours on Saturday. This 850 millibar pattern is also pretty textbook for a significant severe weather event. And so that is a big reason why the SPC is getting more and more concerned about a potential severe weather outbreak if other ingredients can come together, which at least for the deep south and where that enhanced risk is outlined, it's looking more and more likely to be the case. So let's go down to the surface and see how our surface pattern progresses as well. So going back here to Saturday morning, this is 6 a.m. Saturday morning, and we have our surface low, and before that, looks like the surface low initiates near the Texas Panhandle and ejects out into central Oklahoma Saturday morning, and then tracks east through Arkansas during the afternoon, and then up into northeast Arkansas by Saturday night. So this is also a pretty good position for our surface low here, as our cold front is going to be draped across Arkansas and the Arctic vicinity, and our warm front here is going to be draped across Tennessee and northern Alabama, somewhere in that corridor. And so this is going to keep our surface winds back to the southeast, pumping up that warm moist air mass from the Gulf. And that's also going to increase the amount of turning of the winds with height. And so that's going to increase our wind shear as well. So as long as we have the moisture and instability in place, the environment is going to be pretty supportive for an all-hazard severe threat, including tornadoes. We can look at the dew points forecasted for Saturday evening. And so, see, by Saturday afternoon, this is around lunchtime Saturday afternoon, and we have a broad region of 60s dew points across the southern United States. And so this is a lot of real estate for storms to work with, and could potentially create a more long-duration severe weather event, and partially why they were suggesting multiple rounds of storms were possible due to just how broad this warm sector looks to be based on these models. And we're going to compare between the GFS and a couple of other models as well. So let's take a look here at another model here. Let's look at the NAM. This is one of our shorter range models that is pretty similar to the GFS. We're going to just, for the sake of time, just look at the forecast for Saturday. And so the NAM is just a little bit touch slower than the GFS, but has a pretty similar outcome. This is forecasted for 6 a.m. Saturday morning, and we can go through here. The shortwave trough ejects out into the plains during the day on Saturday, and then ejects out into the mid-south region during the overnight hours. And so this is just a few hours slower than the GFS, but it's going to have a similar outcome. And we can look at 850 millibars here, and we have our low-level jet that is across the southern United States, about 30 to 40 knots or so out of the southwest. And that increases to about 50 knots or so across the Tennessee Valley Saturday night. And so this would similarly increase the amount of low-level wind shear in the environment as well, and have a pretty similar outcome to what the GFS would suggest. We can compare this with the European model. We can look at 500 millibars. And so, recording this as of about 5:30, so the 18Z model run is not quite out yet. And so the European has a slightly different solution. It digs the shortwave just a little bit further south, but has a pretty similar progression. The shortwave is located all the way down into the deep south, and so this would potentially limit the severe weather threat further north, as a storm system would kind of initiate further south, and so we might be left with more of just a heavy rain threat up in the Tennessee Valley, but more of a severe threat down in the deep south in the Gulf Coast region. So there's some model differences to work out, but overall the European model does appear to be an outlier solution, but does have a pretty similar setup for mainly south of I-20 across southern parts of southern Alabama and the central Gulf Coast region. Down at the surface, we have our surface low that is, as of Saturday evening, over the Arctic vicinity. This is where surface low looks to be. Cold front be draped across Texas, and the warm front would be further south, which is why our severe weather threat, based on the European model, might be a little bit further south as well. That warm front may not quite come up to the Tennessee-Alabama state line. And so the bottom line is going to be that the warm front is going to be a pretty decent indicator of the northern extent of the severe threat. So the further north that warm front can travel, then the greater the severe threat is going to be. And so that's about going to cover it for today. If the greater severe threat does appear to materialize, a more significant severe weather event appears to that's going to occur, then I can do another video Saturday morning that'll go a little bit more in depth on things like timing and specific threats and things of that nature. So that's all that I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.